resurrection. And the scandal gets juicier. Because as those called to emulate the life of Jesus, called to conformity to the crucified God, the destination of our lives is abundantly clear. One author coined a term to describe it: our conformity to the way of the crucified God, he calls cruciformity. It's so counter to the success-driven rise to the top narrative that we are presented with daily that Henry Nouwen had another name for it: downward mobility. Think about that one for a second. Nouwen, in his tiny yet monumental book, In the Name of Jesus, shows that this way was not a last-minute reversal or discovery for Jesus in the face of death. He lived this way, a cruciform life, from the beginning. At least we can be certain that he lived this way from the time of his 40 days in the wilderness, when he was tempted by the enemy to become relevant, spectacular, and powerful. And he said, no. We are called to live lives of radical, self-emptying, sacrificial love, suffering, and weakness. We are called to reject the temptations to relevance, popularity, and power. We're called to journey to the cross. And so, I don't know if you noticed this, I was trying to prod you a little bit with my sermon title, calling into question our sacred word of journey. And my title may not be the full picture, because journey does matter. But only insofar as that journey is a pilgrimage. A journey not meandering and wandering and picking up any old path because they're really all the same. A journey deliberately traveled toward a particular destination, the cross. And the journey is long and arduous. It requires a long obedience in the same direction. And so our Lent small groups are going to help us travel together. To those who are perishing, those who can't see the hidden wisdom of the crucified God, both long and obedience are foolish, especially at a time like this, when there's so much work that must be done now, quickly. And as we know all too often, the radical, self-emptying, self-giving love of cruciformity, lives lived in the pattern of the cross, is not effective. Most of the time, nonviolent, vulnerable self-giving and sacrifice does not and will not change another person. It won't stop violence. When you give yourself to others, you might be consumed. Self-donation can be met with reciprocity, with joy, with fascination, but mostly it'll be met with indifference, or anger, or misplaced retribution. We aren't guaranteed a response. We don't know. Our call to take up our cross does not come with a promise about how others will respond to our cruciformity. This is why it's so outrageously scandalous and so hard. This, I think more than any other time preparing for a sermon, was so convicting to me because I am just so bad at this. I mean, raise your hand if you're really awesome at self-emptying, sacrificial love. Okay, good, it's not just me. So when we look around at our lives, or the world, or our country, and despair, saying, how can this happen? How could God have allowed this to happen? It portrays our forgetfulness about who God is. Because we are promised something else. It is in our journey to the cross that we find Jesus. We see God most clearly and vividly hanging on the cross. And it is there that God has identified God's self with the godless, with the lepers, with the sinners and tax collectors and outcasts and prostitutes, It's there that God identifies us. So may we boast in nothing else but Christ crucified. Amen.